Portland, Oregon. Rain, routine, and ordinary mornings. The kind of place where big mistakes don't announce themselves until they're already moving silently onward. Brandon Mayfield was a Portland attorney. Work, family, deadlines. But on May 6, 2004, the door didn't bring a client. It brought the federal government at once. 2 months earlier, Madrid. Bombs on commuter trains, and then the scramble for anything that could name a culprit. In the debris, one clue survived, a fingerprint still waiting. A digital image crossed borders and landed in an American lab. Under pressure, the brain wants a pattern, wants a match, because certainty feels like control, almost instantly. In the database, a candidate surfaced. The ridges looked close enough to feel like an answer, and once an answer appears, everything else starts lining up behind it, fast. Confidence can sound like proof. A circle here, a point there, and the story becomes, we know, even when the print itself is still whispering, not shouting, to you. Once a team believes they've found their person, the brain starts protecting that belief. Mismatches shrink. Doubts get relabeled as minor. That's confirmation bias at work, right there. On May 6, 2004, the theory became action. Portland woke up to a knock at the door, and a man was arrested on the strength of a fingerprint that wasn't his that morning. At the threshold, everything changes. One step, one announcement, and your life is no longer yours. It's a case file being carried away without warning. Those small clicks aren't just restraint, they're a message. We're certain. And when authorities sound certain, everyone else starts believing it too, very quickly. A search turns a home into a scene. Every object becomes suspicious, because once the story is written, the room is forced to fit the plot, every time. In a system built for speed, a name can harden into suspect in a single afternoon, and once the label sticks, it takes twice as long to peel it off, later on. Under pressure, maybe starts sounding like yes. Not because anyone lies, because the mind wants to finish the puzzle before the clock runs out too soon. A second set of eyes is supposed to stop mistakes. But if the first voice sounds confident enough, the second brain can start searching for agreement instead of truth, unconsciously. When something doesn't fit, you can treat it like a warning, or like an inconvenience. Confirmation bias teaches you to call the warning a minor discrepancy, again and again. Multiple levels of review should filter error out, but when everyone is working inside the same story, each check can become another step that locks the story in, tightly shut. In rooms like this, certainty feels physical, like the light itself is accusing you. And the more confident the system sounds, the less anyone asks, "What if we're wrong?" out loud. A case file can start to feel alive. Every new page makes the conclusion seem stronger, until the weight of paper becomes confused with the weight of truth. Over time, once the fingerprint matched, everything else became supporting evidence. Not because it truly supported it, because the mind hates a lonely conclusion so badly. Review is meant to challenge conclusions, but when everyone starts from the same assumption, the checks don't catch error, they just echo confidence, back and forth. When your name hits the air, it stops being yours. It becomes a shortcut in other people's minds. Suspect, threat, guilty, before any truth gets a chance to arrive at all. For families, mistakes don't feel procedural. They feel like hours that won't move, calls that don't come, and a fear that someone else's certainty will define your life forever after. Then the illusion cracks because someone somewhere looks without the same story in their head, and suddenly the match doesn't feel solid. It feels forced, for once. In forensics, one small mismatch can outweigh 10 similarities, but only if you're willing to let the mismatch speak louder than the confidence around it, right now. In Spain, investigators kept working the original case, and the moment they compared the print to the real source, the American certainty started to look dangerously premature, immediately obvious. The print belonged to someone else, an entirely different person. Same crime scene, same evidence, but the wrong life was the one being taken apart, piece by piece. When the mistake surfaced, the story didn't end with a dramatic apology. It ended quietly, because systems rarely celebrate the moment they admit they were wrong in public. Being clear doesn't rewind time, The fear, the suspicion, the public label, those are stains that don't wash out just because the file gets corrected so easily. After the arrest collapsed, the question changed. Not who did it, but how did we get this so wrong? That's when the Inspector General began pulling the system apart, line by line. The review wasn't about one bad call. It was about layers, people, procedures, and pressure stacked so tightly that a wrong answer could travel through the entire machine, unchecked. Safeguards are supposed to catch uncertainty, but if the culture rewards speed and confidence, the checklist becomes a ritual, something you complete, not something that stops you in practice. Here's the danger. When examiners know the right suspect, the brain starts helping. It bends attention toward agreement and away from the details that would break the case every day. A partial print can tempt you with close enough, but in identification, close enough is a trap because the cost of being wrong is someone's entire life on paper. In group settings, confidence becomes evidence, a firm tone, a clean narrative, and suddenly, doubt feels like disloyalty instead of responsibility to everyone. After terror attacks, speed becomes a mandate, but speed has a shadow. It shrinks the space where someone can say, "Stop, check again, this doesn't fit," in time. The system didn't fail because of evil. It failed because humans get tired, rushed, and certain. And certainty is the easiest mistake to share with others. On paper, standards look clean. In real cases, prints are partial, smudged, damaged. And that gap between training and reality is where judgment can drift, little by little. A fingerprint isn't a voice that speaks clearly. It's a signal we interpret. And interpretation is vulnerable, especially when the room already wants one specific answer so badly. Expertise is real, but expert doesn't mean immune. The most dangerous belief is that skill makes you incapable of being wrong ever again. Bias doesn't always enter through bad intent. Sometimes it enters through extra context details that should be irrelevant, but quietly steer what your eyes decide to see each time. Review only works when it's truly independent. If the conclusion is already visible through marks, hints, or tone, then the second opinion becomes a second echo too often. Procedures are scaffolding, not a substitute for doubt. If the culture pushes speed, the checklist won't slow you down. It just gives your rush a signature, on record. Wrong certainty doesn't just harm accuracy. It harms people, reputations, families, faith in justice, and that damage spreads far beyond one lab, into lives. The fix isn't to trust experts less. It's to slow the conclusion down, build space for dissent, blind the context, and make uncertainty safe to say out loud every time. One fix is simple in theory. Blind the process. Don't tell the examiner who you think it is. Let the fingerprint speak first, without the story pushing it at all. The real safeguard isn't another checkbox. It's culture where someone can say, "I disagree," and the room treats that as protection, not sabotage, for real. When you separate analysis, comparison, and verification, and keep them clean, you reduce the chance that the first conclusion infects every step after it so much. Expert confidence isn't the enemy. Unchecked confidence is. Every system needs a counterweight methods designed to catch what the human mind wants to ignore in silence. After Mayfield, the lab itself became evidence. Not just the print, every decision around it. Because the real question was systemic. How did normal steps produce an abnormal failure at scale? A theory can become gravity. Once it's accepted, everything nearby gets pulled into it. Facts, interpretations, even the way people remember what they saw later on. The most honest word in an investigation is maybe. It keeps the door open. It protects you from turning uncertainty into a handcuff too soon. This wasn't a single bad actor. It was a chain each link, doing what seemed reasonable at the time. That's why it's so dangerous. It can happen again, anywhere else. Even with multiple reviews, the error survived. Because review isn't magic, if everyone shares the same assumption, extra checks can just multiply the same mistake repeatedly. Latent prints are messy by nature, partial, distorted, incomplete. And when evidence is messy, the mind tries to clean it up, sometimes by imagining clarity that isn't there at all. The better question isn't, how do we prove we're right? It's, what would we expect to see if we're wrong? That question saves cases and lives in court. Correcting the record is necessary, but it's not equal to repair. A system can fix paperwork in minutes and leave a person carrying the weight for years. Afterward, the agency responded, explaining, defending, promising improvement. That's what institutions do. They translate human error into policy language and try to close the gap on paper. Policies can be perfect on paper. Practice is where the truth lives, under deadlines, pressure, and fatigue. A rule is only as strong as the culture enforcing it, day to day. One safeguard is blind testing, checking examiners with cases they think are real, because measurement changes behavior, and unmeasured confidence grows unchecked over time. The goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty, it's to name it. If you can't express doubt, you can't manage risk, and in justice, unmanaged risk becomes tragedy sooner or later. It's terrifying how small the trigger can be. One image, a few ridge lines, and the system can swing from unknown to arrest in a heartbeat, right now. Even after release, the feeling doesn't vanish. You start reading looks, pauses, silence, like the world is still deciding what to believe about you. Every day. Trust is like still water. Once it's disturbed, it settles, but it doesn't return to the exact same shape. Not for the person, not for the public, ever again. This isn't a story about villains. It's a story about systems under stress and the danger of treating expert confidence as the same thing as certainty in practice. Science doesn't ask you to be confident. It asks you to be testable, to show your work, measure your error, and admit what you can't know from a single glance, honestly. High stakes change perception. The more the world demands an answer, the more the mind starts seeing certainty, because uncertainty feels like failure to us. Good systems don't rely on perfect people. They build breaks, moments where stopping is required, where not sure is an acceptable outcome, by design. In investigations, the quiet hero is the skeptic, the one who dares to slow the team down, not to be difficult, but to be accurate, for everyone. Mayfield's life became a test case proof that even advanced systems can misfire, and when they do, the human being is the one who absorbs the blast, personally. Institutions have memory too, stored in files, reports, and reforms. The question is whether that memory changes behavior or just fills shelves forever. The public often hears, fingerprints don't lie, but evidence doesn't speak alone. People interpret it, and interpretation under pressure can be dangerously wrong. Still, what prevents this isn't one perfect lock, it's many truly independent locks, blind verification, measured error rates, and a culture that rewards caution every time. Sometimes the most important action is not a decision, it's a pause. The courage to say stop before certainty turns into damage too late. Every method has an error rate. Pretending it doesn't exist doesn't make you safer, it makes you blind. Real safety comes from measuring risk, not denying it, up front. Even after the correction, the label leaves a shadow. Once suspicion touches a name, it lingers quietly, unfairly, in ways you can't always prove in life. A system that learns doesn't hide its fractures. It marks them so the next team sees where failure happened and builds the repair into the design from now. Every investigator carries a mirror they can't see, their assumptions. The trick isn't pretending you have none. It's designing work so assumptions don't drive the outcome at all. Sometimes expert becomes a shield, an excuse not to question. But expertise should invite scrutiny, because scrutiny is how accuracy survives long term. Sometimes the messy part is the truth. The smudge that won't cooperate is the evidence telling you, don't force a story onto me ever again. And back in Portland, the weather kept falling like nothing happened. But for one family, the air had changed because trust, once broken, sounds different forever after. Some lessons don't arrive as headlines. They arrive quietly, like rain on glass, reminding you that certainty can be comforting and catastrophically wrong sometimes. We don't fix this by demanding superhuman perfection. We fix it by designing systems for real human minds. Minds that get tired, biased, and rushed under stress. Imagine a checklist that doesn't reward speed, one that forces questions. Did we blind the context? Was the review independent? What would disprove this match right now? The Brandon Mayfield case isn't just about fingerprints. It's about how expert confidence can become a blindfold unless your process is built to catch the human need to be right, in time. Bias doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it's a finger on the scale so light you barely notice until the outcome is already tilted, for good. Real expertise includes humility, the willingness to erase your own conclusion and begin again. That's not weakness. That's how you prevent harm, for real. If you want truth, separate the eyes, separate the rooms, separate the assumptions. Independence isn't a formality. It's the firewall against group certainty. Right now. We owe the next case more than confidence. We owe it friction questions, blind steps, true verification so a single mistaken match can't turn into a life-altering disaster ever again. Sometimes the word that saves a life is small. Wait. Wait before you decide. Wait before you arrest. Wait until doubt has had a fair chance to speak, right here. The Brandon Mayfield case proved this. Expert confidence can fail, so we redesigned the system not to shame humans, but to protect truth when pressure tries to rush it, every time.